So, continuing, statement 21. Statement 22, right? Remember the issue on to take refuge in the three jewels is that line that divides between whether insider or outsider. In other words, we could say, whether we are practitioners of Buddha Dharma or not, it begins with, not limited to, but it begins with, have we taken refuge? Have we genuinely taken refuge in the three jewels, in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or not? Then, statement 21, the difference between the great and the common vehicles is the generation of bodhicitta. So here, instead of using the vocabulary of lesser vehicle, common vehicle. So common, emphasizing that, this is the basis, like the foundational vehicle. So the foundational vehicle, sometimes called lesser vehicle. Other times you can say it's also called the individual liberation. Set of vows, set of trainings. So individual liberation needs to be the foundation, needs to be the common place that all Dharma practice should come from. But don't just stay there. So this next line says, one should understand that the commentary now, one should understand that the difference between the great and the common vehicles should not be distinguished in terms of the cause, that is, the spiritual disposition, the path, or the result. They can only be distinguished in terms of a completely altruistic mindset that generates the supreme bodhicitta of whichever type, the one like a shepherd, and so forth. And so here, Khenpo Kunpal says, although some people, he's explaining Kyopa's position, although some people might say, the difference between the great vehicle and the lesser vehicle is that the great vehicle teaches that there are two types of selflessness to realize. The selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. So in the great vehicle tenet systems, they say that in the lesser vehicle, they only teach the selflessness of persons. And they don't emphasize, or they don't even teach the selflessness of phenomena. But in the great vehicle, a more subtle form of selflessness is taught, which is the selflessness of phenomena. And therefore, that is what makes the great vehicle the great vehicle. And some people might say, what makes the great vehicle is in the great vehicle, they have many bodhisattvas and many different bodhisattvas that they can pray to. Many bodhisattva practices and texts and chanting that they can do. And that's what makes it great vehicle. Kyopa says, no, that's not most important. That's not the most defining matter when we talk about the difference between the great vehicle and the common vehicle. Just like in the discussion about what makes you an insider and what makes you an outsider, some might say, an insider, fully understands the four seals, fully accepts the four seals. And if you don't do that, you are not an insider, you are an outsider. Kyopa also says, no, that's too limiting. That's too strict. And that's too limiting. As well, not just too limiting, it can also be misleading. That you think, oh, I accept the 4 seals. I understand the 4 seals. But you are not really taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. You are taking refuge, as I said yesterday, you're taking refuge maybe in your own intelligence. You think, I get it, this sophisticated idea. Oh, that doesn't make you an insider. So here, what makes you a practitioner of great vehicle? It's when, Khenpo Kunpal's words, a completely altruistic mindset. Altruistic mindset means having love and compassion. A completely altruistic mindset that generates, that then gives rise to the supreme bodhicitta, which is, what is bodhicitta? The wish, the determination, the vow to achieve Buddhahood, to we ourselves achieve Buddhahood, so that we can facilitate, help others to attain Buddhahood. So in this, in generally in Tibetan Buddhism, not just in Dugong, definitely. In Tibetan Buddhism, when we say generate bodhicitta, we don't mean, oh, may other people attain Buddhahood. Meanwhile, I don't. No, actually it says, may I swiftly attain Buddhahood so that I can benefit others. So that I can bring others to the state of Buddhahood. So this follows the example of Buddha Shakyamuni. So elsewhere you might read about how, bodhisattvas are, bodhicitta is the vow to make others attain Buddhahood before ourselves. Right? There's even this idea of, I will postpone my enlightenment so that I can help others. That, according to this, according to our understanding, is a little problematic, this idea. Right? I will delay my own attainment of Buddhahood so that I can help others. And this is, very similar to saying, I will continue to drown in this ocean of samsara so that I can save more beings from the ocean of samsara. Yeah, doesn't make any sense, Yes, you can remain in the ocean of samsara, but you need to know how to swim. If you don't know how to swim, all your altruistic, all your altruistic motivation, all your altruistic mindset will only lead to more problems. Now somebody else have to save you. Yeah? So don't, let me go save them, jump in, and then you cannot swim. And as we have seen in movies, hopefully not in real life, when you have a bunch of drowning people, the instinct, even if you jump in to try to save, when you start drowning, you push others to try to, grab up to breathe. You're going to push others. So all your altruistic mindset creates more mess. So you have to resolve to, as quickly as possible, as swiftly as possible, let me clear all my mental defilements. Again, in this text, the Chintamani Shastra, Kyopa Rinpoche explains how in all three levels of training, individual liberation, bodhisattva, and then secret mantra, all three levels fundamentally involves the removal of mental defilements. Poetically, we might say, first one is to renounce the mental defilements. So kind of like remove. Then poetically, second one they say is to counteract the mental defilements. And then the third, right, Vajrayana, is to transform mental defilements. It all, yes, there is a reason why Buddha used these different words and expression to abandon mental defilements, to counteract mental defilements, to transform mental defilements. But Kyopa wants to point out that, but fundamentally, on whether any of these three, it's still talking about no longer under the power of mental defilements. That has to be very clear. That the problem of mental defilements need to be removed. However you remove it. So don't think that mental defilements have any qualities at all, any good qualities at all. They need to be removed. It's just that on the individual liberation level, removing of mental defilements through abandoning mental defilements leads only to a personal freedom. And out of fear for the consequences of these mental defilements, we abandon them. We renounce them. On the bodhisattva level, we similarly abandon the mental defilements, but not so much out of fear of their consequences, because in fact, to be a bodhisattva, sometimes we have to be fearless with regards to the effects of mental defilements. But nonetheless, not to be afraid of the results of mental defilements is not saying not seeing the faults of mental defilements. We still see the faults of mental defilements. And still, fundamentally, we are working on being freed of the power of mental defilements. But on the bodhisattva level, we are motivated now more by the suffering of others. But also, in order to authentically be at this level, we have to have a good foundation in the first level of knowing how to not get caught by mental defilements, knowing how to swim among mental defilements. So not to be afraid to jump in the water now. It's also an obstacle if you're afraid to jump in the water when you know how to swim. Even if earlier when you don't know how to swim, you went into the water, you have experienced drowning, now you have fear. But you have to overcome that fear now on the bodhisattva level. You have to be not afraid to jump in the water. Because why? Because your concern for your mothers, all sentient beings that are drowning, is greater than your fear for your own safety. So now, having learned how to swim, even if there's some fear about the water, you jump in. But jumping in here means jumping in to counteract the mental defilements. Not necessarily jumping in to say, oh, let me save you, let me save you, let me save you. But now to counteract the mental defilements based on the idea of, based on the motivation of, the more I can remove mental defilements, the more effective I can help others. In other words, jump in to further perfect your ability to swim, not only to swim, to develop enough strength to pull people, as you are swimming, all the skills that are necessary to rescue people. Then on the secret mantra level, understanding now there is no difference between the antidote and the poison. Now, this is a very high position, understanding. And here, I won't say much about it because we don't have time, and I'm probably going to create misunderstanding. Just know that, in the secret mantra level, it involves a very high view that the poisons and the antidote are non-dual. But how are they non-dual? Oh, okay, so that takes careful understanding, which we will look at some point, okay? Now, so here, Khenpo Kunpal's commentary says, they can only be distinguished in terms of a completely altruistic mindset that generates the supreme bodhicitta of whichever type, the one like a shepherd and so forth. And so here, the footnote tells us is referring to three types of bodhicitta is said to have been explained by the Buddha, right? The shepherd-like bodhicitta, or bodhisattva, the ferryman-like, and the king-like. So the shepherd-like bodhicitta is probably the example that gives this understanding of postponing your own enlightenment. Because they say, like a shepherd, the shepherd is not going to rest until the shepherd has made sure, right, that all the sheep under his or her care is safely back in the barn, right, settled, have food, have warmth, have water, everything done. They are back, they're safe, protected from wild animals. Okay, now shepherd can go and rest and have food and sleep. So they say this is one type of bodhicitta. Second is the ferryman, which is both the person driving the bus or the ferry and the passengers in the vehicle. They depart from the point of departure and arrive at the arrival point at the same time, moving along together. So this is said to be a second type of bodhicitta. Compared to the first type has greater courage, because it's so courageous that it says that its courage is so great in that it's okay if I can bear the suffering. I need to make sure others are okay first. The second type, the ferryman or the bus driver, is like equal courage. Like, we'll do this together, but of course I have to pay more attention because I'm driving. The rest are just passengers. The third is called the king-like. The king-like means, even though you are a crown prince, even though you are designated to be the future king, until and unless the time comes where you are formally and officially king, you cannot yet truly govern your kingdom. Only after you have assumed full authority, only when at that point, then you greatly benefit your kingdom. So that's said to be the third type. Often I have seen when these three types are explained, it is explained as if there are three ways of doing it. My own limited personal opinion, I'll share with you. You can decide, whether this makes sense or not. Is that I don't think it is really that there are three ways of doing it. When it happens and how it happens, it necessarily happens according to the king-like way, which is first you achieve Buddhahood. Because you cannot truly help anyone, in that ultimate sense, if you yourself have not first arrived at that place of safety. And if yourself have not yet gained all the necessary skills called all-knowingness. So in our bodhicitta prayer, may they be free from suffering. May they be liberated from suffering. And all obstacles, right? It says obstacles to freedom and obstacle to all-knowingness. So this is referring to Buddhahood as consisting, complete Buddhahood as consisting, not only our own safety and freedom has been achieved, but the quality of all-knowingness also needs to be achieved. Without these two, back to the analogy of saving drowning people, if yourself don't know how to float yet, number one, that's freedom. And secondly, you don't, even if you know how to float and not sink, if you have not yet gained the skills of how to effectively rescue drowning people, also not much use. So when fulfilling the bodhicitta vow and becoming a bodhisattva, and the bodhisattva on his or her way to Buddhahood, necessarily it's going to happen in the king-like model. So what about the other two models? The ferryman and the shepherd. I would say the shepherd example is an example given by the Buddha to motivate us, to remind us that we need to prioritize others over ourselves. Because when we strive for Buddhahood, sometimes it's easy to let ego enter the picture. Like, I want to be Buddha. I want to be great. I want to save all beings. So we need to have the motivation of, actually, I'm doing this for others. And like a shepherd, I will not rest until others are safe and resting. It needs to have that kind of great motivation, that kind of great courage. Then the ferryman like it. When do we use that? It's when, in the course of practicing, in the course of taking these teachings into our own experience, in the course of being with others, we need to think, we are in this together. We will leave together, we will arrive together. So that we don't get, again, carried away, like, I'm more important. And also, it doesn't need to feel like it's so lonely. I need to do it all by myself. No, together we do it. Yeah, does that make sense? So that again, these three bodhicitta types, or these three bodhisattva types, rather than seeing them as three choices, see that they are three facets, three dimensions of how to implement, how to actualize our bodhicitta vow. Right? In terms of how the process is going to take place, is the third type. In terms of how strong a motivation of altruistic intention for others needs to be the first type. In terms of practical implementation, or while in the process, how we view and regard others, we should think we are all going together. Yeah, we're in this together, as they say. Truly, not just, we're in this together, but, meanwhile, you are struggling to pay rent and, I'm going on vacations. It's not we are in this together in that way, but truly try to see how we're in this together and care for each other. Yeah, so this is 21. So we will stop here today. So no class Saturday, Sunday, but don't get too many defilements. Defilements will accumulate. There's no cleansing, Watch out for mental defilements even on the weekends, especially on the weekends. Some of us, weekends, too much time, then lots of mental defilements. With too much time, instead of focusing on that which is good. I want to say focusing on Dharma practice, but some of us can get very fixated on Dharma practice, like thinking, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. Yes, of course, there's formal Dharma practice. With formal Dharma practice, we can inspire ourselves to try to do more, as I suggested to DDIS members, Really, just meeting once a week with me and others in the evening, doing 2 hours of practice, you're not going to see much growth or improvement. And to the degree that you want to practice together with DDIS, then I persuade you, go look at the other programs and teachings that I have done, because it has the flavor of DDIS, I suppose. Then also, so you can look at those series on the Drigong Dhammakirti YouTube channel, then on the Drigong Dhammakirti website, under listening. There are many videos, audio. You yourself should do self-study. But this group, most of you can attend this morning. So this is the self-study, so to say, the equivalent. But then more broadly, Dharma practice doesn't have to be just this. And in fact, it's not just this. It's developing more and more of an ability to see and experience everything through the filter of Dharma. To be able to recognize, see, the truth of change and impermanence and uncertainty. See how, I just reacted to that situation. Oh, yes. See, how much sentient beings are suffering, regardless of how much they want happiness. They keep diving into the cause of suffering. They keep destroying the cause of happiness. Wow. So the ability to see our day-to-day experiences through the lenses of Dharma. It does mean that we have to put aside other filters, I know this is not easy and not popular to say you have to put aside other filters. But you have to choose, which filter to use. To take refuge in the Dharma is to say, I'm going to learn to habituate using the right filter, Now, on the practical level, you have jobs, you have responsibilities. When you're doing your job, the immediate filter has to be your job filter. Yeah. Like doing things in that way, right? But then that immediate filter needs to be informed by the long-term filter, which should be Buddha Dharma. But don't like put, inappropriately, sort of like, in your professional life, you put Buddha Dharma filter right as the immediate filter. You might get fired, Then not only that, worse is people will say, oh, used to be a good employee. Then somehow when started practicing Buddhism, became bad employee. Now, if you work for a poison making or a weapon making company, then maybe it's better to get fired. Yes, of course. But other than harmful, obviously harmful employment, please don't get fired because you will now put the Dharma filter in front. Dharma filter is the long term in the background. I'm talking about that filter. I'm not talking about the immediate filter. Immediate filter, we all have different circumstances, so we have to learn what that filter is and how to harmonize that filter with the Buddha Dharma filter. But the practice Dharma is to improve this Buddha Dharma filter more clearly. There's no point to blindly accept what is being taught as Buddha Dharma and say, oh, I have to do that, That blind acceptance, it might work in the short term, and then after a while, it might just backfire. So I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, you listen carefully. You make sure that you have really heard, what is being said. Then, even if you cannot accept it yet, it's okay. You're just being honest to your own process. You cannot force yourself to accept, But just because you cannot force yourself to accept, you should not distort or pervert the Dharma. Say, well, actually, it's not like that. Now you're bringing other filters, especially some New Age filters, some secular filters, some socialist filters, some capitalist filters, some communist filters, some anarchist filter, all of that, No, don't mix that, If you're a professional anarchist, then yes, that's your front filter. But you are also taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. And the big filter has to be Buddha Dharma Sangha. Then you need to figure out how to harmonize, how to have your back filter inform your front filter more and more. So this is practicing Dharma, right? Anyway.